program explores complex financial crimes and their global impact. The views expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and/or the host. From boardroom decisions to shadow banking, from Wall Street to the dark corners of the internet, this is From the Hill to the Trenches, the search for justice. I'm your host, Dorothy Hill. As a former Goldman Sachs associate who has worked in 5 countries, including Germany and Japan, trained in compliance by a former agent of the FBI, and advised both global banks and government agencies, I've witnessed how money moves through legitimate channels and shadowy networks. In this podcast, we investigate the world of financial crime, otherwise known as fin crime, compliance, and the pursuit of justice. We talk to the insiders, the regulators, investigators, compliance officers, and occasionally the reformed criminals who understand how financial systems can be exploited and protected. From money laundering to sanctions evasion, cryptocurrency schemes to corporate fraud, we follow the money trail and examine the human impact of financial crime. Whether you're a finance professional, work in compliance or technology, or simply care about transparency and justice, join us as we navigate the complex intersection of money, power, and accountability. This is From the Hill to the Trenches, the search for justice. Thank you. We are joined today by our esteemed guest, Ralph Dahm. Ralph is going to provide a brief background of his educational experience and credentials, as well as work experience within a few very exciting domains that many of you, you've either read in the news or will read in the news for years to come. So, Ralph, I'll hand it over to you, and then we'll start our discussion.
Sounds good, Dorothy. Thanks very much. Obviously, I've been around a while. I began my career way back in the 1970s when the dinosaurs were still walking around, and mostly in electronics, distribution, manufacturing. I eventually worked my way into consulting for businesses that needed to hire specific talent, mostly in the finance sector and banking, anti-money laundering, that kind of thing, compliance. And finished my bachelor's degree in 2008 at University of Phoenix. Had a lot of business background before going to college, but wanted to finish that degree. So I did that in the business administration. Worked in digital currency starting back in 2013. I was mostly doing recruiting for banks, anti-money laundering, KYC, BSA, that kind of thing. When banks got in trouble and needed specialists to come in to fix their processes, we would provide the talent. And got interested in digital currency, and I was taking a class actually at the University of Utica, and that was in 2013. I completed their one-year program for financial crimes investigation, and during one course, the instructor handed out a pamphlet. We're going to talk about Bitcoin today. It's like, the heck is Bitcoin? Nobody knew what it was, never heard about it. Very specialty area, but our interest was because the bad guys were using it to circumvent not only income tax laws, but also banking compliance laws. You could move in secrecy. Nobody knew what you were doing. And it was the Wild West. You could buy hand grenades, drugs, other bad services in the Wild West area. Silk Road being the prime example. I mean, it was just crazy. And they felt they were above the law because it's on the internet. The U.S. has no jurisdiction until the U.S. government came in and said, we have a different idea, shut them down. But Bitcoin itself caught on in a big way. Back in January 21st of 2013, I first became aware of it. The price of Bitcoin was $17.31. Should have sold the house and bought all the Bitcoin I could at that time. Today it's what, 115,000 and going strong. So I got more and more involved in the digital currency market. Ethereum became popular. Now there's 17,000 currencies out there. And actually owned a digital currency company at one point until I sold that in 2021. Was mostly working to place talent in this industry, as well as advising companies on how to improve their product line, and got involved in a few years ago in an area that was new at the time. It was thought that it's impossible to trace digital currency. It's totally anonymous. But the fact is, it is on an immutable audit trail. It's on the blockchain. You can look at transactions in 2009 if you wish to go back that far. It does not go away. But there was no way to trace it practically back then. It's only in the last few years that the new tools have been developed to come into this market and trace cryptocurrencies, not just to see who's doing what, but to try to track down criminals who are absolutely exploiting being anonymous, targeting U.S. citizens who are losing $50 billion to $150 billion per year per FBI statistics in romance scams, fake investment site scams, fake work scams. Here's I got a call today from someone. Hey, here's a job for $300,000 a year. Are you interested? Send me your resume and banking details. Nobody does that. And I get 5 or 6 of those every day. I'm sure you get text emails, people saying, hey, do we know each other? They're simply phishing to get your number. If you respond, now they have your number, we'll sell it to others. But that's become explosive. And so there's this tremendous epidemic of crime being perpetrated against U.S. citizens. Now the tools exist to try to trace them back and make some kind of recovery. That's not very certain because it's only 2 to 4% ever recovered. But once it's gone, it is difficult because the criminals are very sophisticated. But I've been doing the last 2 years now, getting new certifications. In addition to my certified financial crime certification from Utica University, I've also got several blockchain investigation certificates in Ethereum, advanced techniques through the Anchain University. And I've been looking at this industry very actively for the past 2 years, with many active cases now ranging from the low of literally only $200 to a high of over $1 billion in stolen Bitcoin. Those are not unusual numbers. People lose 50, 60,000 to their entire life savings to these scams in a few minutes. So we offer the ability to try to identify where did the money go. Is there a possibility to recover it? A possibility to prosecute the criminals once we identify them? The answer is maybe. But we work with law enforcement once we've uncovered the evidence to have them move forward on the case. Yeah, they're saying we have cases that range from the very small to the very large. The average case I work on, people have lost, in many cases, their entire life savings, several $100,000. Not unusual to see a $1 million case. People have bought into this. They've been led astray. It's a typical confidence game, only with technology. So instead of having you give them dollars and they run off, now it's Bitcoin, any other cryptocurrency, or that people are actually withdrawing cash and putting in ATM machines, which converts it to Bitcoin or another currency, but the money's gone. And,
yes.
What we're trying to do is disrupt this industry through education, not seeing enough public service announcements. We do broadcast appearances. I've been on WGN television, CBS, and others. This needs to happen every day. We need government support, get the word out that these scams are occurring so people know to be cautious. Too many people are being taken advantage of, especially the elderly who are targeted specifically because they're not as familiar with the technology. They're more trusting, and they will do things that after it's done, they say to themselves, how could I have done this? And it's an educational process to stop the crime before it starts. As I say, it's epidemic coming from countries, Laos especially, Myanmar, Cambodia. There are centers, camps, visualized apartment complexes, and all of them are filled with people who are contacting U.S. citizens, trying to scam them out of their money. That's all they do all day long. Thousands and thousands, estimated 100 to 200,000 people. Most of them are prisoners themselves. They're victims of human trafficking, and they're forced to work in these conditions. If you don't steal enough money today, maybe you don't eat tonight, or maybe you get beaten tonight, or worst case, they'll take you out and kill you. There's been documented cases of that happening. So it's just a horrible mess. And you say, why don't the governments of other countries do something about it? Because many times relatives of government officials are running these camps. We need federal government activity to maybe try to put a stop to this politically, because it is epidemic. It's not just those countries I mentioned. There's scam camps in Africa, Israel, Europe, China, of course, and North Korea, particularly targeting U.S. citizens. And it is totally out of control. And now it's even getting worse because they're using artificial intelligence. So we could have a phone conversation like this on Zoom, and it's not me. It's someone that took a picture, ran it through an AI tool, and now they can talk in my voice to you, have a conversation in real time. You think it's me, but it isn't. That's how sophisticated it's getting. So the crime we expect is only going to continue, and very, very difficult after the fact. Most people don't report that they've been victimized. They're embarrassed. They feel foolish. They feel they'll be ridiculed, and many are. And so only 1 in 20 even report a crime occurred in the first place. So we mentioned 50 billion. It's probably much, much higher. It's just not being
I agree.
reported.
This is a very similar approach of law enforcement with other types of crimes, such as human trafficking, not understanding the vulnerable state of the victim. And like you said, particularly elderly people not being well-versed in technology, and also too trusting. Like your example we discussed before we recorded on the grandfather scheme, whereby a criminal contacts an elderly person who then wires the money thinking that their respective grandson or granddaughter is in jail or overseas and urgently needs money. So you're absolutely correct that the numbers are likely much larger in terms of financial losses. So let's talk about where that money is flowing. You mentioned countries such as Laos. We also think about Iran, China, and other nation states.
Sure.
Those are the
Korea,
states
Cambodia.
that have been identified by the State Department.
Exactly. Yeah, we know where the money's going. And it's just a
where's the
matter
money
of
going?
How do you stop that? How do you recover that? Because you think, well, okay, they took the money, went from point A to point B.
Right.
That's true, except once it hits point B, it divides into thousands of transactions.
Yes.
And it's floating around the internet, if you want to call it that. It's just spinning. I sent you a diagram you might want to put up on the screen at one point. A simple case, what it looks like. It might go into from point A to point B to the first scammer, then that divides 15 times, that divides 15 times, and every point divides 15 times. It's not unusual to see 3,000 different transactions per hour, if not faster. I mean, it's a very sophisticated scheme. They're using automated technology to move that quickly. And they'll divide sums of money. They call it dusting. You might send a tenth of a penny here, tenth of a penny there, $1 million over here. And you got to try to find where's the bulk of the money going. And it keeps moving, keeps moving, keeps moving. Well, that's all very fine. But if I'm a criminal, it doesn't do me any good to have money spinning around the internet. It's no good to me unless I can use it. I'm not going to run down to my local bank and say, hey, I'd like to withdraw $10 million. That's not happening. So one of their options is they'll go to the Chinese money launderer and pay the 20% fee, and they'll give them cash. Hard to trace. Once it's cash, it's gone. You're never going to be able to trace that again. But it's got to get to that point. Somewhere there's got to be an exit point. One of the exchanges, maybe it's Binance, Coinbase, or there's many, many exchanges. And they'll take out small amounts, so it doesn't trigger anything. Nobody's suspicious. But that, if you have a very large amount of money, that's going to take a long time. If you stole $20 million, you're going to divide it. So a lot of the big cases does tend to be organized crime. These transnational organizations, Mexican cartels are very involved. And they're like anybody else. We once saw a wallet, a Mexican cartel controlled a $750 million wallet, stolen money. And a year ago, great. What was Bitcoin a year ago? About 80,000. Now it's 115,000. So they made a great return on their investment, especially since they had no cost in the first place. The money was stolen. But they're like everybody else, hey, let's keep it in Bitcoin because the money's growing and we're making money with the money we stole. Well, still not doing them any good sitting in Bitcoin. They got to get it somewhere where they can use it. So they're going to have to move it at some point.
Yes.
To a point where it can be seized, and that's when we try to work with law enforcement to do that. That's where part of the problem comes in. You mentioned earlier, people go to law enforcement, they're afraid they're going to be shamed. And there was a case in Texas a couple of weeks ago where a gentleman lost $1.7 million, entire life savings, filed a police report, and the response he got was, how could you be so stupid? Well, not the best approach by law enforcement, especially when the guy went out and killed himself the next day.
So sad.
People are that distraught, and I've known of many cases where people have committed suicide. They didn't tell their family members in many cases. They're so embarrassed. They've lost everything they worked for. It's all gone. can never come back. There's no hope. Well, the sun will come up tomorrow. You know, you lost your money. We can maybe try to get some of it back or all of it back. There's always hope.
Yes.
But these scams are so devastating to people. You can see why no one wants to report it. You know, who wants to hold up their hand and say, "Look what I fell for"? You know,
Exactly.
I did think that was going to marry me.
Right.
And then you got the embarrassment factor. Well, you know,
Yes.
if a guy came up behind you on the street, put a gun in your back, and took your money, you'd report it. This is the same thing. Instead of using a gun, they use a computer. It's the exact same thing. It's a confidence scam in most cases, a romance scam, and they can run these scams for weeks to build up the confidence. You think it's a real relationship. There's a famous case where one was texting Brad Pitt in France last year and thought he wanted to marry her. He was sending photographs back and forth. He eventually started asking for money because he needed it. He had hospital bills and all that. So she divorced her husband, took the $800,000 settlement, wired it to Brad Pitt, and never heard from him again. A couple weeks later, so, well, it's strange I haven't heard from Brad. And then she sees Brad Pitt at a movie premiere with his fiancée. He goes, "Wait a minute, I'm the fiancée." And it dawned on her that she was had. Never got her money back, and she's homeless today. Happens frequently. People impersonate celebrities. One here in Chicago was an AI impersonation of Elon Musk. I think I lost you again. Hello?
Brad
Now
Pitt.
he wins again.
It's. I'll check. We'll cut that.
So
So yes. So let's talk about this romance scam scheme as it's connected with cryptocurrency. So Ralph just took us to an example of a woman who fell for an online fraud scheme. That's incredible. Divorced her husband, took the settlement money. And then what steps would a person like that need to take with local law enforcement? And then how does local law enforcement work with the FBI and possibly with Interpol, other international law enforcement investigation agencies to try to trace that money? How does that work?
Well, let me clarify first. Let's take the first step of I'm a victim. I just lost X amount of money. What should I do? First step is go report to your local law enforcement, local police department, and file a report. And they will probably say there's nothing we can do about it because they don't have the training, don't have the budget, don't have the tools. It's not exactly a high priority. It's technology they really don't know what to do with. Not slamming them, but this is so new.
Yes.
But also they have other priorities. We had a homicide last week in town. There's a burglary of high net worth individuals taking place, or somebody's breaking into retail stores, or a car wreck. They got a lot to do.
Yes.
And those kinds of cases have a better percentage of being solved. But a crypto case, like the odds are finding any money, slim to none. How are we going to prosecute somebody if the criminal is in Cambodia? I mean, there's no prosecution. It's like, what do you want us to do? And they said, okay, well, you mentioned the FBI, so you can go to the FBI, file an IC3 report, IC3.gov. They get about 880,000 a year. Don't expect to ever hear anything because they're 880,000. You just don't have the manpower for this overwhelming number of cases, right? So they have to have, how are we going to handle these cases? Which ones will we put some time into? And if it's under $5 million, we don't have time for it.
So the other aspect,
you've got to decide where your resources are going to be used, and it's going to be on the larger cases, good or bad.
Yes. Well, another aspect is looking at it from the outgoing wire. So that's a bank, could be a credit union, even Venmo, although there are limits. But let's say that example of the woman who divorced her husband and sent the $800,000. It is indeed a preventable control at banks and credit unions, let's say financial institutions in general, to stop an ACH or wire. However, if someone is operating through a cryptocurrency type of payment, like all bets are off, correct?
It depends. There's a lot of information there. You mentioned the financial institutions. So the victim comes in and they take their cash out. Say, well, with $50,000, it's my money. Give me the cash. And the bank teller or other personnel are saying, this is probably a scam. We don't think this is real. But the victim says, it's my money. This is what I want to do. Give me my money. And so they do. Well, they'll send a wire out. the victim realizes quickly that this might be a scam, has remorse, but they could possibly claw it back, but it's got to be within 24 hours. Once it's gone, that's the whole idea of a wire, it's gone.
Yes.
Well, let's say the victim took it in cash, $50,000 in $100 bills. It's their money. The banks now are having you, if you look at the signature page for the receipt of the money, there's a little phrase that says, I acknowledge this might be a scam. That gets the banks off the hook because without that language on the deposit slip, the banks are liable for not warning the customer. So the banks are protecting themselves now, and that if you do that, take the money out in cash and go to a Bitcoin ATM, throw it in there, and money's gone. You do not have recourse to go back to your bank.
Let's talk about the crypto ATMs. We'll also put up a few graphics for those intermediary pauses. Yes. Very How do they work?
Yeah, I can go into as well. Let's take an example. CoinFlip, for example, just one of the manufacturers out there. They have 4,441 ATMs all across the country, except in New York. They're not allowed to operate in New York.
Correct.
But I go down to my local gas station, and there's a vending machine for a soda, whatever, and just happens to be a little crypto ATM machine there. I can walk to that machine, type in my credentials, set up my account, throw in a $100 bill, and it's converted to Bitcoin. And I get the receipt with my wallet address, so there's my money. Or I can send dollars via the machine to someone else. That's how the crypto schemes work. So our victim takes the $50,000 out of the bank, starts shoving money in the machine, and they get a piece of paper that says it was sent to X address, converted to Bitcoin and sent to a Bitcoin wallet, and they never hear from anybody again. Well, is the vendor of the ATM liable, or what do you do? The one case in Texas where a woman immediately, the owner of the gas station saw what she was doing, called the police, and they came in, realized it was a scam, and they instead of confiscating this big machine, they brought in the saws and cut it open and got our money back. Now you got a legal question. Was it really, whose money was it? Once it's in the machine, does it belong to the vendor of the ATM, or is it still her money? That's for the lawyers to work out, but she got her money back. Usually once it's in the machine, it's instantly converted to digital currency. It's gone. Doesn't matter where the cash is. The cash now belongs to the ATM company, right? And they converted the Bitcoin, took their fee, which was high as 30%. Don't even go down that road about that highway robbery. But the rest of the money was converted to Bitcoin and sent to the scammer. Now you have the only recourse is to trace that Bitcoin wallet address and try to start the merry chase to find where'd the money go to see if it's possible to recover it.
Yes. So what about the lawsuits against these crypto ATM machine owners and operators? Like in your example, there's a lot of cash in that machine from a particular night's transaction.
Fundamental question. Once the money has changed, you put the money in the machine, whose money is it?
Yes, exactly.
You voluntarily put the money in. The money legally, and this hasn't been decided yet, but my prediction is the courts will decide the money is the property of the ATM machine company.
Yes.
You put it in. They did what they were supposed to do. Yeah, they charge you 30%, but you agreed to it. The money is now theirs. They sent it off, the other 70% off to the scammer. Now, did they get any ID? And this is where they may get in trouble, these companies.
Yes.
They don't collect know your customer information. They may be in violation of regulatory compliance laws. You're supposed to know who you're dealing with because of these situations. They're famous for not doing that. So it becomes anonymous. It's kind of like a crypto mixer where you can put money in and you can take money out and you can't follow the trail because they mix it up for you like Tornado Cash. You can trace through some of that, but not easily.
Yes.
But it'd be the same kind of a thing. So I think legally the courts are going to come down in favor of the owners of the crypto ATMs.
Yes, I met with a
logical,
few...
legal. It's not correct. I don't agree with it, but legally it's a sound premise, in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer.
Absolutely.
I've studied a lot of law, but just fundamentally, you willingly gave them your money, paid the fee. It's their cash, even though it's sitting in the machine. I think the police will be forced to return the funds, or there'll be something of that nature because illegal search and seizure, that kind of thing. Did you have a warrant? Did you just go in there because you acted quickly? I don't know the details of the case, not my problem, but that's how I think it's going to go down. Although I agree with the police. Grab the machine, take the money. It's the only way you're going to prevent the total loss. Deal with it legally later.
Right. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Yes, I agree. So in that particular case, in Texas, let's take it back to New York. So you mentioned that New York State does not permit these crypto ATMs, which is quite interesting because New York City is the global headquarter of many global banks such as JP Morgan Chase, Goldman
Exactly.
Sachs, etc. Yet we also think about the Consumer Financial Protection Board, which was founded by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Wouldn't this type of topic in terms of consumer fraud be within their domain?
It was, yeah. That's why there's no ATMs in New York, because they enforce the law in New York. You have to meet specific requirements for licenses and permits to operate this type of business in New York.
So when I met with Rhode Island state detectives at the annual Association for Certified Fraud Examiners, ACFE, just recently in Nashville, they talked about the number of machines in Rhode Island. And you think about Rhode Island, where it is geographically just south of Massachusetts, north of Connecticut and New York, they're having a very difficult time dealing with this particular infrastructure that plays a major role in money laundering. So what can the state police and even the FBI do, Ralph, in your opinion, to institute controls and protective measures, not just for the elderly, but anyone who's caught up in a crypto scam?
And I think that's out of their wheelhouse. That's going to have to come from government. We need to get the federal government and state governments involved for legislation. There's only some of these other agencies, law enforcement, FBI, state, local level. That's after the fact. After the crime has occurred, then they are trying to seek justice and prosecute the criminals and maybe recover the funds. But the matters we're discussing here are legislative that must come from government. Only government can create and write those laws, whether it's Congress or state legislature. That's where these preventative measures have to come from, while they should take extra actions to enhance educating the general public on what's going on out here. You know, you're going to get a phone call one day. It's going to be from your grandson. "My grandma, I'm in prison. They want $10,000 to let me out." Well, maybe you should be in prison. No, I'm not. But first thing you would do is stop, call your grandson to verify that it's true.
Yes.
You don't have to react instantly just because someone reaches out to you, especially.
Right. Take a calm approach. Make sure that you follow all the measures that local law enforcement or even an attorney who's well-versed in this advises you to do. Let's switch gears over to the romance scams and what you mentioned before, the human trafficking element. So we're going to have several guests on the podcast who work with law enforcement in Southeast Asia and other countries where those law enforcement entities are allowed to work on a cross-border basis. Some countries won't permit the FBI to work within their borders, such as North Korea. That being said, describe, please, a typical pig butchering scheme. Can you define that for our listeners?
Yeah,
and also
scam,
an example.
Pig butchering, it's all kind of the same terminology. In a romance scam, what'll happen, someone will reach out to you, maybe on your cell phone. I get texts all the time. "Hi, this is Shirley. Do we know each other?" And because I know what's going on, I just hit delete, won't even respond. But let's say you go, "Oh, attractive young woman wants to talk to me. Oh, hi, how you doing? I'm not sure we know each other." And it develops into a conversation. That could take weeks. They're going to fatten you up. And then eventually, what's called a Shirley says, "Hey, I'm going to come to the U.S. and maybe we can have a better relationship. Maybe we can live together, get married, all that." Building you up, creating this fictional relationship. And eventually, sooner or later, it's going to be, "Oh, my car broke down. Can you send $200 to help repair my car?" Well, smaller money, so you send $200. "Oh, thank you. It goes on. And there's another problem. "Oh, my house has collapsed. I need to buy a new house," or something, whatever. Always going to be or something. Send more money. And eventually it's, "I need another 30, 40, then I can come to the U.S. And the promise of this relationship until they got your last dime. There's no more money, or you start getting suspicious, and then they cut off communication. That's called the pig butchering. You fatten up the pig.
Yes.
You cut them off, you butchered the pig, you took your money, and you run. And then they'll sell your name to somebody else who will call you and say, "Oh, I understand you lost all our money. I can help you get it back. Just pay me $25,000. And so you do, and then they disappear because they're working with the original scammer. It's insidious.
Understood.
And they will keep coming on and on. Even if you're broke, they will still pester you for money because they're just trying to get your last dime, and they don't care. They have party. Hey, I got 20,000 on this idiot. Well, look at that guy. He committed suicide. Isn't that funny? That's the attitude and the level of criminal that we're dealing with in these romance scams.
Right. These are
It's
really
absolutely
sadistic psychopaths who have zero empathy for the victims.
Careless. They do not care about anything.
Right.
More horrible stories that can be shared where they try to blackmail you, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's no wonder people don't want to report what happened to law enforcement because they're so embarrassed. It's like, people have told me, how can I be so stupid? I tell them. I refer people to the suicide hotline. One guy was so distraught. It's like, hang up this call right now, call suicide prevention right now, then call me back. He was that distraught, and he didn't even lose all his money, but he lost about $2 million.
It's a lot.
A lot, right? And he had more. He could live comfortably the rest of his life, but was so distraught at being taken advantage of.
Yes.
That he frankly was suicidal. And there are many, many, many cases of people that after being scammed, they're totally devastated emotionally.
Yes.
And, some will take their lives, unfortunately.
So we are in a predicament that the recourse is not like typical cash or a house sale fraud. It's much more complex. It's global. It's really the velocity rule as well. So we say on Wall Street in financial services, the velocity of a suspected transaction is such that a deposit is made possibly in an account that has no activity over a certain period of time, and then monies are wired quickly, either to one destination or multiple. So that's what we call the velocity rule. We're seeing similar processes used by criminals in teenage sextortion cases. We'll have at least one guest on our podcast to talk about that. It's also a dire situation in which U.S. youth are being targeted, blackmailed online, asked to send money, have threats against them and or their family members. And like you said, Ralph, many of these criminals are based overseas and in some cases are operating within a highly organized criminal enterprise. So over time, we, as a community of compliance professionals, detectives, investigators, and others, we really need to expand the knowledge within those associations such as AARP, professional organizations, alumni groups, or even industry groups have more speakers come in and address these issues. So you wouldn't think, for example, that the Women's League of Voters, that may be a great place to start and then build out from there. In your view, if you had all the time in the world and wanted to get the message out, which 3 U.S.-based either nonprofits or for-profit entities would you work with to get that message out to the general public?
Tough question. One, I'd go to ARP, because you mentioned they've already published a number of articles on these types of frauds. Keep doing it. Don't do it once and then never do it again, because people may not read that issue. They may see it, forget about it, but if it's repetitive, if they see it enough times, it will sink in. Public broadcasting, here in Chicago, WTTW, and that should be putting PSAs, interviews with people, examples of what's going on. Local newspapers, put it in print. Go out and see senior citizens. I'm going to be attending a senior seminar set up by our, what's his name, Seth Lewis, Senator of Illinois. He's putting a senior resource center together next week. I'll be attending that. It's finances, but also part of it is how not to become a victim of fraud.
Yes.
Especially
and also
seniors.
The banks themselves. Think about it. Everyone
banks
transacts.
Need to put posters on the wall, on the counter. If you think
the
you're a victim of fraud, you probably are. Tell us, let us explain it to you. It's okay to wait. I need $50,000 today. Well, what happens if you wait till tomorrow? Nothing.
Right. So they can
And wait,
investigate it.
it's so
Yes.
important. It has to be today, but it's no good tomorrow. It's no good today. Take your time and think about it. And maybe the banks need to impose, you hate to do this, but let's say anything over a certain dollar amount, it's an automatic 24-hour wait period. So you have time to think it over.
It's not just
Kind of
think
forcing
it
people
over.
not to access their money, but it's like, if you're just throwing it away, don't come back to us tomorrow and say, gee, I lost my $50,000. It's like you insisted it was real. We tried to tell you it's not. Maybe you kind of have some kind of control in place. Okay, we'll send the money, but we're going to wait a day or 2 days. You think about it. Let us investigate who you're talking to. Maybe it's a scammer. A lot of people, they'll put money on an investment site. We've been around for 8 years, and you're making 1,000% on your money, and you go to whois.com and set up the site last month.
Yes. People don't even know to go to that website. Yes.
They need to vet who they're talking to. Why did this entity call you? Why are they reaching out to you to invest money? How did that happen? Did you look at their background? Well, the website looks great. Yeah, but how long has the website been up? A month. There's a clue right there. Or do the pictures on the website match the real company? I was doing one yesterday, a search. In fact, the FBI just put out a bulletin yesterday about just go to Facebook, all up and down Facebook. Hi, we're a law firm and we can get your money back. And you look at the pictures and you go to the real company's website and the pictures don't match. Or it's a law firm that set up office 2 weeks ago, and there's a slew of fake law firms telling people they can get their money back, and they're all scammers.
Well, that's not the onus is on Facebook and Meta to prevent those ads.
They won't do a thing. They should have been doing something years ago. And if we're not responsible for what people do on our platform, well, maybe you should be, right?
Absolutely.
WhatsApp is the same way.
I think about that woman who single-handedly took down Pornhub.
I lost you again.
And there are other people who are really pushing the envelope on due diligence for big tech companies like Facebook and Meta. So that being said, yes, what else would you like to discuss, Ralph, in terms of conveying this stellar amount of knowledge to our listeners, which I do believe will lead to additional podcast episodes so we can really drill down on A, the problem, and B, possible solutions. What would you like to share?
We need education not only of consumers, but also for law enforcement. I've talked to a lot of law enforcement. Police officers are not aware, don't have the training. That's fine. I will give them the evidence at no cost to them. And then here's the problem. I had a case this week. Went to law enforcement. I traced where the money was. I could see it. It was on Binance in this case. So I drafted a subpoena with a cover letter, preservation letter, to give it to law enforcement. So all they had to do is put their name on it, send it. Well, they go to the state's attorney and they say, we don't think it'll work. We're not going to do anything. Well, What good does that do? I even called let's embarrass somebody, the Illinois Attorney General's office. You guys listening? And I was told by one of their attorneys that we've been directed not to work on these cases. Well,
incredible.
Who's going to if you're not going to help? There's 1,200 Illinois citizens every month that are victimized, and you won't do anything. Tell me that makes sense. So there's where the bottleneck comes in. We can't get law enforcement to do what they need to do. I had another case last week. In one of the northern suburbs of Illinois, found the gentleman's $35,000, brought up the subpoena, gave it to a police. He went to Attorney General to go to the grand jury. And Attorney General, I think it was District Attorney in this case, said, no, I don't really understand it. I don't want to go there. Ask for a subpoena. So I'm happy to come in and testify, industry expert. And I think they're intimidated by the technology, don't want to look foolish. Somebody might ask a question they can't answer. Well, bring me in. Happy to come in.
Absolutely.
Go to a judge. Judge doesn't know what's going on. I'll go talk to the judge, explain it in layman's terms. This is what happened. This is how we did the investigation. This is how we know where the money is. Here's the technology. It's not hard. Boom. We need this document, the subpoena or warrant, so we can get recovery of the funds for our victim. Are we going to prosecute? We'll get the name of the criminal, but it's probably going to be somebody in another country. You're not going to prosecute. But at least you can get the monty back for the victim. At least you're doing something.
Right.
That's the greatest frustration. We need to get more willingness to cooperate at the levels of authority, because I can't issue a subpoena. A law firm will, but you've got problems, So I'm trying to get around law enforcement in some cases where they will not. They had another case in Florida. We think you're a scammer. Me. It's like, I'm doing this for free. I'm giving you the information. All you got to do is do it. And they sat on it for 3 weeks because they had other cases, right? They're following up on
Yes.
some, I think, adolescent sex crimes, like you mentioned. There are a lot of sex crimes against teenagers, and that's
Yes.
the higher priority, and it's local, right? If they get the victim and they find the perpetrator, you can prosecute. All right.
Yes.
That's not the case with ours, so it's a low priority, so they wait 3 weeks. Well, guess what happens in 3 weeks? The money moves again. Now we got to start over.
It's
So it
very
needs a sense
difficult,
of
if not
urgency,
impossible.
and
Yes.
you have to take this seriously, and we need that
Absolutely.
level of cooperation that we're just not getting. And it's new. It will get better over time, because right now it's what the heck is this?
Yes.
They don't know
It's
what to do.
novel.
What are we supposed to do with this?
Yes.
We don't have the manpower. We don't have the budget, or more likely, they're tangled up in bureaucracy. I have a case right here in the Chicago suburb. A year ago, I did a seminar at the police exposition. One of the detectives from a local police department approached me and said, "Hey, I've got a case, $750,000 lost last month. So let's get together." So I met them at the station. They showed me the police report, redacted all the contact information of the victim. And I said, "Well, okay, I can help you out. So we need a letter of agreement." Fine. I wrote up a one-page letter. There's no money involved. Here it is. All right, well, I got to take it to the police chief. Then we got to go to city council. Oh, now we got to go to the city attorney to look at it. And back and back and back. It's like, I just literally had a conversation Monday. So where are we? Nowhere. He gave up. So just tangled up in bureaucracy. It's like, well, now the bad guy has 1 year a head start on us. What are you telling the victim? What are you doing for my $750,000 loss? Well, all right, give the criminal a year head start. That does not help the odds of recovery. That's
And they
part
know
of the
that.
problem. How do you
Right.
get through that? And that's even worse at the federal levels. You talk to some of these federal agencies, and they, what I call, talk Fedski to you. Well, we know what we're doing. We've got all the answers. Why do we need you? It's like, trying to help. If you don't want the help, that's fine.
You should go
We're
work
to
for
help.
the
All
FBI.
we're trying to do is solve crimes and prevent some of this theft that's going on and bring people to justice. But we need all the support we can get. We need access to the tools the federal government has that they're not sharing. Then you get the bureaucracy, and that's the biggest problem in law enforcement. Is there's so much bureaucracy involved. Even to do a simple thing, you would think,
Yes.
how hard is it? It's a one-page letter, no money involved. All you get, somebody sign it, done. We're going round and round for a year, and nothing's done. Meanwhile, other victims are losing life savings while we're sitting here arguing about a piece of paper. And we're not even arguing about it because no one's even looking at it. Just turn me loose. In fact,
Right.
I don't even need the name of your victim. I could care less who it is. All I need is one piece of information. Where did they send the money? It went to this wallet address, a Bitcoin wallet. I'll take it from there. I don't need to know any details about anything. I will give you the evidence, and you can go create a subpoena, maybe get a recovery of the money, and identify who the criminal is. I don't need to know anything. That's how it works.
Ralph, what about insurance? The Bitcoin company and other entities involved in this industry. So you think about cybersecurity insurance that corporations have to cover financial losses up to a certain amount, under the insurance policy. Why would an insurance policy for these crypto companies not have the same role as cybersecurity insurance has for companies? How does that work?
Well, it won't work because they don't want to go broke. All right, you're going into a market where you know you're going to lose $50 to $150 billion a year. Today, that's what's going on, and it's only increasing. How are you going to insure against that? And who's going to pay a premium? Here, let me pay this insurance money, $100 a month, in case I give my life savings away. Who's going to buy that policy? Nobody.
Now, thinking more about the cryptocurrency, like Coinbase and other companies that have a subpoena served against them on behalf of a victim.
Oh, they have. Yeah, I'm sure those
Like
big
kind of
companies have
FDIC
liability insurance, but
right.
they don't have the liability. We're just a platform, like we mentioned, Facebook. We're just a platform. We're not responsible for what happens. We provide the ability to buy and sell digital currency. If you give your money away to a criminal that's also on our platform, or we know about it, we can turn off that wallet. But guess what? 10 more will show up in 5 minutes.
Absolutely. The mushroom
effect. It's not possible to identify who all of these people are. Once you identify an individual that set up the wallet, right, we can ban that person from the platform. And guess what? The same person comes back on under a different identity, fake.
Yes.
How are we supposed to monitor that when there's hundreds of thousands of people every day setting up wallets? I mean, it's a monumental task just to administer it. Try to police that amount, it's never going to happen.
Well, we know that compliance programs at banks, they use what's called KYC, Know Your Customer, and there's a very complex process within high-risk industries in particular for that level of due diligence. So collecting official government ID, primary place of residence, beneficial ownership, if it's a legal entity. That level of due diligence and know your customer is not being done in this industry.
Well, it can't be done
So
because
they're taking advantage of it.
Criminals are not in the U.S. and they're not customers of the bank. The customer of the bank is the victim, right? They know
Yes.
who that person is. They got the KYC and all that. They're
Yes.
sending money to someone that's anonymous through Bitcoin or a wire transfer offshore. Once it's out of the
Yes.
country, good luck with that. And that's what you're up against because other countries don't follow the same compliance regulations that we have here.
Absolutely.
So it
Some
goes
do.
Some do, but most
Some are
don't.
quite strict. Switzerland, for example. But
Well,
that being
we
said,
have problems here as well. I'm talking about bank
Yes.
compliance. There's another story again, Texas, because Texas is heavily targeted. One walks into a bank with a checking account slip, withdraws $200,000 in cash, and walks away. It was not the owner of the bank account. No one verified who she was. One, the bank has $200,000 cash laying around. There's the big mystery right there. What? Usually you got to call the Federal Reserve and they'll send it to you in a day or two. But they had the cash laying around.
Right.
Gave it to her. She just walks out the door. No one asked for an ID. Here's a deposit. Well, whose fault is that? In that case, legally, it's the bank for not doing a proper verification of the account holder. But the money's still gone.
And if it's a brokerage account, forget it. The money cannot be
Nope.
retrieved
There you
or
go.
reimbursed.
It's even
Thank you
worse.
very much, Ralph. You are an amazing source of knowledge. We appreciate all your hard work, especially the pro bono work that you do with local law enforcement on behalf of victims. You are definitely a shining star. We're very honored to have you on the podcast. And like I said, I am most certain that this will lead to additional episodes to delve into some of the topics we talked about, such as pig butchering, crypto ATMs and the lack of regulation and controls,
Sure.
as well as the entire crypto asset tracing, investigation, seizure, and prosecution. So hopefully
many
we'll have
elements
you on a
could do
future.
this for a long time. And literally just this week, we just see the explosion of fake law firms trying to scam people in the recovery. They're not law firms. They're impersonating law firms, some prestigious, others you never heard of them, but it's a new wave, a new attack, a new method, and the criminals are constantly evolving. So you'll have podcasts forever in this system. There's so many elements.
Yes.
We could talk on this, unfortunately, for a long, long time.
Thank you very much for rolling up your
If
sleeves.
it prevents one person from being scammed, it's worth it.
Yeah, oh,
Meaningful
absolutely.
Education is just amazing.
Yes. And always, like you said, slow down, proceed with caution. And on the bank side, they need to update their procedures to investigate something that's considered suspicious or is what we call an anomaly in the rule model. So if they have a customer who normally sends 50,000, 100,000 to the same entity in the same country, and all of a sudden they receive a request to send $100,000 to a natural person, we call that in Venezuela, that's what we call a flag or an alert. And that needs to be investigated by those respective professionals. So when the machine works well, there is an investigation, the wire's not sent, and then it leads to law enforcement being informed through the U.S. Department of Treasury, FinCEN, through what's called a Suspicious Activity Report, SAR. And we'll talk more about that on a few future episodes. So thanks again, Ralph. And
Thank you for having me.
enjoy the rest of the day.
You as well. Take care.
Thank you.
You've been listening to From the Hill to the Trenches, The Search for Justice. I'm Dorothy Hill. Financial crime, or fin crime, may seem distant and abstract, but its effects touch all of us through market instability, compromised institutions, and eroded trust in our financial systems. If today's discussion has sparked your interest, there are ways to stay engaged. Visit our website, www.hill2trenches.com. That's number 2, hill2trenches.com, where you will find resources, extended interviews, and case studies mentioned in this episode. Follow us on social media at Hill Trenches, that's trenches plural, at Hill Trenches, for daily insights and breaking news in the world of financial integrity. Most importantly, share what you've learned. Greater awareness is the first step toward a more transparent financial system that works for everyone, not just for those who know how to exploit it. Until next time, remember, following the money reveals the truth, and truth is the foundation of justice. Join us again next week as we continue our search for justice in the complex world of global finance.